like those puzzles you can move by like moving tiles around just to put them in place.
I don't know it, but it shifts the rest of the puzzle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying it shifts the rest of it. Like, you put one thing in place and it shifts the rest.
Or like introducing planets, each with its own gravity, is another metaphor.
Yeah, I think that works too. That you know what the planet is you're introducing, but the other effects, how it does impact everything else just by its gravity or its connections with everything else.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see if there's any other random stuff that I was thinking about that before we get into like the art thing. No, I think that's it. We can go to the continue that essay that we were going through.
We did most of it. I think there was, I don't know what was left.
Yeah, I'll look now, and otherwise we can go to essay 2 also on art. So I'll just have a quick look if there's anything in there. What we might do, hey, maybe we can try Zoom next time, because then what I can do is share screen, and it might be better in some cases that we're just looking at like the same, as opposed to just looking at each other. We can look at like the same page. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
We can try that. That might be, yeah. Did we? Oh yeah, you mentioned that, some of that being overwhelmed. Let's see. Okay. A lot of me questioning the contradiction here, but we skip that. Actually, let's go to this bit at the end, and then I'll quickly skim through the last remaining questions. Can you see I've highlighted something here? A question raised at the start of this discussion should now be clear.
Yeah.
This is a personal question more than, because I haven't experienced art where it's of such personal significance to me that I feel like, well, at least maybe I don't think in those terms. I'm not sure. Like art that confirms or denies the efficacy of man's consciousness, or the feeling you get is that that's the feeling. That's what artwork does. That's how she describes the response when you experience either art that completely negates or affirms your fundamental view of reality. I'm trying to pin a specific example that I've had. Like, I don't know if I've had this denies my efficacy of consciousness. Like I haven't had it. I don't know what that even is.
It's hard to know what the feeling of personal significance is supposed to be. Like I can say there's some literature that makes me feel something more profound, but not like I found a deep meaning beyond, or some intense meaning, just as much and more so like, oh, this gets me thinking or feeling excited. I mean, in a sense, that's what I've experienced sometimes. Certain pieces of artwork makes me more, or literature in particular makes me more excited than others, that it gets me thinking about something that's worthwhile to me, I think. To me, that's the way I would experience personal significance.
Right, but would it wouldn't be in terms of this experiencing an affirmation or denial of the efficacy of your own consciousness. That's too abstract for me anyway, to be like, oh, okay, yeah, this work denies the efficacy of my consciousness. This work affirms it.
Well, I mean, I kind of experienced the more significant artwork to me is artwork that, when I think about it, is closer to maybe my fundamental view of reality. That it does seem to be true, but it's very vague to me what if an artwork really does support or negate it, because it takes a lot of work to think about to what extent is it like I haven't validated it often because I just take it for what it is. Usually I respond in a strong way to a piece of literature, and it would seem not to do with something about the art. I mean, um, Rand is making the claim that the significance comes from the fact that it affirms or denies one's fundamental view of reality on some level.
Right.
And I do think that's true, at least for what I've experienced.
Yeah, I guess there's also like, where does a non-response fit in? Like, if you read something, you're like, this is pretty boring. Like, I don't know if that's negation. I just, this is boring.
Yeah, or maybe because it says nothing about my view of reality, or it says, or I
Okay.
think it says nothing about man's consciousness, and that's my evaluation.
Yeah.
On another level, I mean, interest could have to do with even your sense of life as well, which is why are some reactions particular to an individual. I don't think it's always a case of always something fundamental. It could be something minor about reality that makes them interested, but I can appreciate some art as affirming a nice view of reality, but there's something about it that I find boring or uninteresting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's, so I guess you can have, these are the two extremes. It either affirms or negates, but there is room in between for just something that doesn't seem to be relevant, doesn't seem to make much of a statement on specifically the way you view things, so then you might be bored, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
It's not necessarily I think there's enough reason to say it's not always the deepest thing in the same way that there's certain fashion styles you may prefer that you might have a reaction to, or certain styles of artwork that you react more strongly to. And I don't know why that would be exactly, but I can appreciate some differences sometimes. Like oh, that's just a different style. I'm not always thrilled about it, but I see the value in it, something
Yeah.
in it, as opposed to say maybe a painting that's literally just a whole painting is just black, literally, just a black square. Like I can't really appreciate that. It's just a black square, just a painting, just literally one shade of black.
Yeah.
I don't know if that could say anything to me, and I have no reaction. And not only that, I don't think it affirms anything about consciousness.
Yeah, and it might not exactly, so you're not going to have a reaction rather than something that says your way of looking at things is wrong, which is different. I haven't experienced either, though, to be honest. Well, maybe. I don't know. It's just hard sometimes to like. I think specifically what I'm looking for in this essay is there's a lot of claims made here, and I'm trying to validate them by my own experiences, which I think is the only way to validate claims made about art, right? And so I can't yet. But that's why I wanted to. I couldn't quite make the connection, but what you're saying makes sense to me. Um,
I think a
not
lot
huge
of
claim.
this goes down to emotional reactions, and that's very hard to do based on anything but personal experience. And that's not really the best way to generalize to make wider claims about art. So she's made a theory that's very difficult to validate in research because so much of it is subjective, as in it's not a fact of the way things are, but it's a reaction to the way you've thought of things. So at a basic level, she's just saying that your emotional reaction is because you're judging the object as in a positive or negative way or in an emotional way because of your emotional reaction. And those emotional reactions are based on underlying chosen premises.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just an extension of her claim that emotions are the result of your value judgments.
Right.
But the material within or the content within art is so much more than, say, reacting to the sight of a dog or something. You're reacting to so much more.
Okay. So do you think, how about this? Is artwork capturing, because she speaks about artworks capturing a worldview. Do you think rather than a worldview, it captures some particular aspect because most people, let's say, aren't consistent, don't have an explicit philosophy or a consistent philosophy, and so that would explain if a art captures all kinds of different things, that would explain why different people like different things in the art, see different things. They can find part of it boring, part of it interesting. Like I don't like everything. I'm reading Musashi still. I don't like everything in it. There's some weird stuff in there. I'm just like, but there are some things that I like. So maybe, do you think it makes sense to say then it captures part, like an artwork captures part of a metaphysics, or what?
It's hard to say because, I mean, it definitely is making some fundamental judgment, or your reaction is some fundamental thing. But I don't think it really could capture everything. Depends on how wide-ranging that piece of art is. Like you could have a book as long as Atlas Shrugged versus a 10-page short story. I don't think you could even have enough content in the short story to convey a wide view of reality. You can capture something more narrow, like a view about courage or something like that, or a view about can you understand reality, just yes or no, but it might not get to a wider question like
The role of man's mind.
things like that. I mean, you can get close, I think. It really depends on the style also and how much you can convey successfully. I think it depends on the skill of the artist, whether it can do that or not. In the same way that you have a personality, but I don't think it's possible to show yourself in entirety in a few minutes. Like you need time and context and more information and just more there to react to.
That's true. That makes sense. Do you think though that so metaphysics, like when she's saying it has a metaphysics, she means fundamental questions like the nature of man in relation to the universe in relation to man. But you're saying to accurately capture that view encompasses so many things that you'd need like an entire book. So you can't necessarily. It maybe captures snippets of one, but not a full. Not a full. I don't know. Not a full thing. Do you know how to say?
Yeah, like with a painter, you might want like 6 paintings before you get an idea of what they're saying about life. Because it's a different medium than literature, so one painting does less work than, I don't think it can show as much as a novel. But then a series of paintings can tell you a whole lot.
Yeah.
And few painters really just say like, oh, I'm making one painting. They usually do like series at a time. And that, I think that series or whatever would make me a good judge because it's a pretty comprehensive usually.
What do you think, if you don't have an explicitly defined philosophy, how does that affect this statement she's making on art? Like what role does it play now that you don't have, if you don't have one of these, if you don't have your philosophy defined?
I'm not sure if it would matter that much other than it might seem unruly if they don't define it. It might seem like sometimes like
just Googling unruly. I don't know what that is.
Like,
disorderly. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. It might be difficult but I do know most artists, if you ask them, at least good ones or ones that know what they're doing, define it in some way, that they do have some philosophy explicitly defined.
Yeah.
Like Dali definitely thought of life in absurd ways, and he said that explicitly, and his art's kind of like that. So it's hard to find artists that don't, I think.
Mm.
I mean, that's the validation I have for that. That the best I have is that artists I have heard of, they do a better job maybe than most people at defining their view on life, or whatever their views are. Like, I think they're usually pretty good about that. The best artists, I think, are the most prolific or the most devoted artists.
I guess it was saying in this section that its sense of life is like a pre-philosophy, and art captures the sense of life. So maybe that's it. It still captures your philosophy. It's not explicitly defined. So there are different elements of it.
Yeah, and some people are pretty in touch with their emotions, and even without the explicit definition, you get a pretty good sense of who they are, what they view,
Right.
just based on the way they write or something, because they're good at communicating what they feel and think.
Yeah. Okay, we can. I think we can skip these. Some of these we touched on before, so the rest we'll just skip. Yeah.
Yeah. The artist like smears, that was the same as this question covered the same.
Yeah. Yep. And we also talked a bit about modern art last one as well. So. I'm in philosophy and sense of life. That essay in the main folder.
Main folder. I always forget how to go up in the file hierarchy in Google.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sends you the Google link in Chinese, and other times it sends it in English. I don't know why.
Very weird. Okay. Sense of life.
Yes.
Yes, I've actually read through this one myself in the past, like quite a bit, a number of times.
Perfect. That's great. I've done a thorough dissection of the whole thing. Yeah. So this idea of the recorder, I've heard of it. You know, you there's other. I don't know who. Like, there's a quote. Let me find it for you. Yeah. So your future self is watching you right now through your memories. That's another one. And so there's, I mean, I get that. Like, you know, part of the view we have about ourselves is made up of evidence from our past. Like, oh, I was good at this, or I wasn't good at this, or I couldn't figure this out, or I could do this, or like I'm strong, or I'm brave, or whatever it is, through experiences that we go through. So I get that. But to say it's every single thing seems to me like, you know, like right now, let's say I'm playing with my pen. Like, how does that affect? I don't see. It seems a bit. Maybe the point is it's not the case. You're just saying most things affects you, but you know, like every single act to say that it has some impact. Maybe that's not the claim. What do you think?
I think it's an integrating mechanism. It might be a bit much to say that every single thing that's ever happened, but it sounds like just as an integrating mechanism, it takes what's important. It could abstract away certain things or it could ignore certain things, but it is keeping track in some way. I mean, it is true that your mind has just some general, I guess, way of remembering everything. Just it looks at everything and does forget over time. But I think what's important is that it's integration of things you do, that nothing is like can go by your consciousness completely if you're aware and paying attention. And I think on some level, all these things get automatically integrated into your subconscious. Maybe the details get lost, but it seems like that your mind would in some way store all this information that, I mean, that you have all kinds of bad actions or good actions you've taken throughout your life. I don't think she really gets into much evidence of it other than you just learned things when you're younger, but I'm not sure she really validates it much more than that. I mean, I know I can validate it better, but I don't know she presents the really good evidence in the essay.
When you say automatically integrated into the subconscious, what does that mean? Do you just mean stored as memory, or?
Yeah, stored in memory.
How do you think mannerisms fit into this? Like, to me, I don't know. I don't think there's like a philosophy in mannerisms. It's just maybe your dad would do this thing or like scratch his face and then you scratch your face. I have no idea. Like, or you have a certain look because your parents would have a certain look. Like, I don't. What do you think about stuff like that?
I guess it would depend on to what degree is it actually a cognitive thing, is to what extent is it a consequence of things you chose to do.
Not at
I mean,
all.
mannerisms could in a way just come about from, I don't know, just more like associative stuff and not really directly conscious and things like that. I think this is more about integrating the things you've chosen, and some things can show up through that automatized way of thinking. Like it might show up in your style, like your clothing style or art style or the type of people you like as friends. And those would be some result of choices you made. I think that's more Rand's claim here. We're dealing with the things that are a result of your choice and your focus.
She says in this essay it's mostly formed by adolescence, so it does seem to be a non-chosen thing. Later she does say you can choose to, by explicitly defining a philosophy, you can then slowly change your sense of life. But initially it's at least from what I interpreted, it seems to be non-volitional, like it's not chosen. It's just what you view as important, I guess. But there are some things in there that I still don't like. Mannerisms, which we spoke about just now. Because here she says, like, if you look a little bit further down, you see she's talking about, or maybe it's not right here, but at some point later she says, in every gesture, in every thought, action, like it's there. And I'm like, well, I don't really see some kind of unified essence in every thought and action and mannerism and so on.
I think it's more about that every choice and value judgment has an implication, or it implies something you think about life. And yeah, I think even children could do that on some level. It might not be always clear, and that's why it could be so varied. But I think on some level, just every choice will have some implicit or some implication on or is an implication of your views on life. I mean, you can't make a choice outside of that, your premise or that your assumption underneath it all. I mean, it's not like you can choose to go to your job for work without having some sense of your efficacy or some sense of a value judgment about yourself that like is worth going to work or whatever it might be. I don't think you can avoid something underlying those choices.
What about, all right, right now I'm playing with this piece of paper in my hand while I'm talking to you. What philosophy does that reflect? Because I can't make any connection to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would just say that's probably not really a type of action that's in focus. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but it's like to the extent it's not very an explicit choice, I'm not sure if it has much relevancy to anything just because it's not explicit.
but from this essay I got a sense of life is implicit. Like it's
Oh, yeah.
actually mostly formed by adolescence. So that's what I'm like. I get that you can shape it. I got that it's almost fully, so at least according to what I've read, I'm like, well, it should be in everything, like even in me playing with a piece of paper, but I don't see it. So
Um, yeah, I would say that one's not a consequence of that. I would dispute that one has to do with sense of life, like playing with your pen. I mean, I don't think that, I don't think it can be connected to sense of life. If Rand thinks it does, I would really disagree. I think it could only have it, like the way you use a pen or something. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I don't think it does reflect your sense of life. And I don't see how it could.
yeah, well, I couldn't either. I mean, like I said, I could see parts of this, but not, maybe in the way I interpreted it, I was like, not in the full sense.
I mean, I'm not aware of anywhere she's clarified about those other actions like you're talking about, like absentmindedly playing with a pen or something like that. Like, I don't know what she would say. I would suspect that she would say it's not, it might not be an action that's even relevant to sense of life because it's more like a physical thing. It's not, it doesn't seem to be a consequence of your views on anything in particular. Although she might say like, oh, you're evading the importance of thinking about this and that reflects your sense of life. And I think that would be absurd, but I don't know if she would do that.
So there's this next part here. It says a sense of life is a preconceptual equivalent of a metaphysics, and then it sets the nature of a man's emotional responses and the essence of his character. So we're getting some clue as to what what sense of life is in terms of like in relation to everything else, in relation to character and so on. What I don't see an essence. Like when I think of myself, you can tell me about you, but I don't see some like underlying theme. Like there are different parts of my personality or character or whatever it is. I don't know, but I don't see one unifying emotion at the core of all other emotions, or at least I haven't been able to notice. Um, I've asked this I was in that little group before that was discussing this essay, and I asked the question. Everyone's like giving me clues on tips on introspection. I'm like, but I know how to introspect. That's not an issue. The issue is that I can't see an underlying theme to all my emotions. How about you?
I would say that would be the wrong way to look at it. The way I
Okay,
think
cool.
of it is, okay, you're judging yourself as an individual. What is
Mm.
the essence of you as an individual? I think you just say me. That's all you say, but what does that meanness consist of? It's your sense of life, I guess. It wouldn't be asking, well, what's the one unifying trait of everything? Well, the unifying trait is you. I know it might sound like almost like begging the question, but I don't think you can find the unifying characteristic of yourself without just saying it's yourself. It's just everything about you. There's nothing, it's not like you're trying to find a unifying characteristic of like 10 different people and you can find one trait. I think the trait is just saying it's me. That would be the essence, but how do you pick apart what the essence stands for, what it refers to? It refers to your sense of life, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I got. Like, I agree with you that there's no, I'm many different elements, and you just said that the sense of life is the essence. But yeah, I mean, if you even look down to this part I highlighted, it says, an implicit metaphysics with the compelling motivational power of a constant basic emotion, an emotion which is part of all his other emotion and underlies all his experience. This is a sense of life. So that is it. But I can't see that. That's my issue. I can't see what this thing is that she's talking about. I can see personality, can see, you know, debating personality versus character and so on is different. But I can see personality, let's just say. but I can't see this thing she's talking about.
Can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, yeah, it can be difficult to even pick apart what the concretes are about it. I mean, I know what I was saying is more like you could say the essence is you, and I do think that unifies things enough because you're only unifying one individual particular thing. I don't think you could really unify it beyond just pointing at it. In the same way, like the essential of an apple, like you just point at it. You don't start listing things. In the same way, especially for individual things, an individual apple means just an apple. Its essence is itself. There's nothing else to really say because it's not being compared to anything. So if the essence of yourself is just yourself, but can it be reduced or thought of in terms of a basic emotion that's constant? Is that present in what makes you you? I think it depends to what extent it's what you even say the basic emotion is and how much it covers. I do think something will be implicit going on every time you make a choice, but it seems hard to characterize that as one emotion, as a basic emotion. I'd rather just call it a sense of life and could say it captures a range of feelings, but it's a range of feelings that focus on the way you make value judgments.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you that it's not one basic, or she says a constant basic emotion, but that doesn't mean that it is a single emotion or evaluation like anger. Like I would agree that that could involve multiple things.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable, or she has a better claim to say if there's a range of basic emotions, or that it captures a set of emotions that really are fundamentally or implicitly your fundamental view of life.
Yeah.
Which it might consist of certain happy emotions and angry emotions, but a narrow range, a range.
Yeah. And to say though, the self is sense of life to me is confusing because here is the definition, or at least she tries to point out what sense of life is. I can't. I mean, I'll just say it's interesting, but unless I can see, like, actually point to that element of me, that thing which she says is the basic emotion underlying all other emotions and experiences, then I'm like, well, I still don't see this concept being true or real in relation to, something like just character or personality, which has lots of different elements. So I would agree with it if I could see it in myself, but I just can't. Like, I can't see this thing in myself. So
I do know what you mean by it's difficult. I've always found it difficult to even know what my personality is. I've never felt really certain what to say it is. And I've met other people who feel the same way about their personality. Like they're not really sure what it is. Other people might be able to see it fine, but for myself, it's hard for me to say what is my personality. But when I really reflect on it with like what sort of art I look at, what sort of things I write about, how do I feel often throughout the day, I get a better sense of who I am. And I wouldn't worry so much about saying sense of life is in essence. I don't think Rand is claiming that it is the essence of your character as much as it sets the nature of your emotional responses and the essence of your character. Like it's not the essence itself. It helps set what it is. And I know the way she wrote that sentence might seem a bit confusing, but it sets nature of those things. So if it sets the nature of its essence, it couldn't be the essence itself. It's some way that influences whatever the essence might be. I think it might be difficult to talk about an essence of an individual because individuals are particular people. Like it's hard to say when it's not a concept or an abstraction. It's like it's a proper noun. So how do you have an essence of a proper noun, an essence of a singular thing that only one of it exists? And that might be a separate issue, actually.
right, I get what you're saying now. Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I guess that essence is the sense of life. But then, how do I identify? It's still vague to me. So
It's difficult, yes. Well, I would just focus on the fact that's just a basic way that seems to capture the way you think about things, a range of emotions, as we said.
let's see. Actually, Matt, I'll just maybe we can pause here.